But every day I'm thinking of ways for someone to come and take me away and say, we're going back to 2004.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 59th episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is one of your hosts, Platty M3.
And this is your other host, Yangus the Legendary Bandit.
Insert intro here.
Wait, that's the line you wrote for the intro, Platty?
Me? Thought you wrote it. I didn't want to erase it or add anything. I thought you were working on it.
Well, I thought the same thing. You said you were starting the document for tonight.
Yeah, but you said you'd probably be writing something.
Was I supposed to write the intro?
No.
No.
It's fine.
Guys, you do know that on Google Docs you can see who wrote what and who did which edit, right?
Of course, but yeah, that's no fun.
Yeah, I prefer the ambiguity, so let's leave it at that.
That's probably for the best.
Whatever. I don't get paid enough for this.
Okay, everyone. We are back with our third of 5 planned decade-by-decade game side quest episodes tonight. We've covered 84 and 94, so tonight we're moving on to 2004. Not going to talk a bazillion games tonight. We're back to our normal everyone picks 3 games format. And with that, we have picked 3 slime timers to chat with us tonight. Please welcome back to SideQuest Pendy, Bluestar, and Jay, our own version of PB&J.
Speak.
Hello.
Speak.
Speak.
Listen, you're great actors. Your lines perfectly.
I'm just reading what was written here.
It's true. It does
I know.
say
Thank
speak
you,
on
Super
here.
Mario Bros.
It does just say speak.
Speak.
Well, good point
Game
with
good,
that
play
PB&J
games.
name, Yangus. Hopefully we got a lot of good ones to talk about. I do see an unhonorable mention, so maybe we got some bad ones too. But Yangus, you and me tonight, we're going to be the bread. We've got our PB and James. We'll have them talk between us. We'll kind of snake around after the first part. So B doesn't always follow P. We can have some butter, jelly, and peanuts. We can mix it up after a bit. But Yangus, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go straight through PBJ and get to me. And then after that, it's all chaos.
This is going to be the weirdest sandwich.
Yep.
Don't lick.
What flavor, Jay?
You're Jay. You get to pick.
You get to pick, yeah.
Oh, I want to be apricot.
Jalapeno.
Favorite. Jalapeno. Yeah, apricot's this.
All right.
Okay. Alrighty. I'll get us started here. So, I guess for my first game, I'll talk about one that started off over 1,000 years ago, and it involves a big old door. That's right. It's actually a game I've been recently playing. Again, for like the 10th or 11th time. Paper Mario, the 1,000-Year Door. Woo!
What a perfectly timed podcast.
I know, right? Yeah, I just finished the remake about last week or so, and we're gonna be talking about the original, the OG. So originally came out on the GameCube in about middle of the year 2004. 2004. I think the remake released just a few months shy of the actual 20th anniversary. But anyway, this is a sequel to the Nintendo 64 original. Kind of took the bigger, better approach. But this is one of those games that I remember being really excited for since I played the original on the N64 so much up to that point. So won't go too heavy into the story and stuff, but for a quick little synopsis, Peach is on a vacation and she ends up finding this treasure map. She sends this old treasure map to Mario while she's on the middle of her vacation. Mario goes to the town of Rogueport to meet up with her, but it turns out that Peach is nowhere to be found, and her advisor, Toadsworth, tells Mario that a strange gang must have kidnapped her. Perhaps it was Bowser. Well, as the game goes on, you find out that Peach was kidnapped by the X-Naut organization, who are searching for these ancient items called the Crystal Stars, which can be used to open the 1,000-Year Door in the title of the game. There's a bit of backstory to it where you kind of learn about how, long ago there was this ancient city, supposedly sank into the ocean in one night, but because it's been, over 1,000 years, people aren't really sure how true any of these stories are. So as you play, you start to unravel some of those mysteries, as well as trying to collect these crystal stars. And thanks to the map that Mario gets, he begins to hunt them down across the land in hopes that they'll lead him to the princess and stop the X-Nuts. Meanwhile, Peach learns some vital info to pass along to Mario thanks to the help of Tech the computer within the X-Naut base. And you have Bowser, who's trying his best to stay in the plot by finding both Peach and the Crystal Stars, but constantly failing at every turn, because for one reason or another, this game absolutely just loves to humiliate Bowser wherever it can. But This game is broken up into 8 different chapters and a prologue. Each chapter has its own settings, NPCs, and a new partner character who joins Mario on his adventure, with a seventh optional party member if you complete a certain side quest about halfway through the game. Story vignettes go from the classic stopping the dragon in the far-off castle, a fighting arena where you claw your way to the top of the ranks, a set of mysteries on an exclusive train ride, stolen identity and doppelgangers, yuck, 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 if you get that reference, thank you, and a high-flying adventure that'll have you seeing stars. Gameplay is a lot like the first game, having action commands for jumping, hammers, and the partner character's various skills. With the right timing in this sequel, though, you can impress the audience that watches your battles and earn some extra star meter points to pull off some flashy special moves, too. Battle gameplay should be familiar if you played the first one, but with some welcomed improvements to the formula to make battle commands a bit easier to pull off for players, whether you're a new player or a returning one. Players can also now use what's called the Super Guard to negate any damage they would take, and in some cases you can actually reflect the damage back onto the opponent if they do a direct attack, or some cases if they shoot a projectile, it'll sometimes go flying back at them and hit them for full damage. So it's one of those things where it's worth trying to practice and learn it, so you can, maybe give yourself a little more challenge too. But anyway, the timing is real strict, though, so you have to be real careful if you want to try and do it. Or you can also just use regular guards if you would prefer to do that. But if you need some extra helps in fights, though, the badge system has you covered. From stat-improving badges to new moves you can use, to ease of access for pulling off partner swaps and commands, or in some cases you want to make things a little harder to get some extra points in combat. This game really amped up what kind of badge combos you can do, so you can do all sorts of crazy stuff in combat. Outside of combat, though, you have your usual RPG usual thing that you do. Go to different places, you talk to folks, take on some side quests, use your partner's field abilities to solve some puzzles and find some secrets. Plenty to discover in this game, and new to the Paper Mario series, this game included the brand new Pit of 100 Trials that will test players' battle abilities, and if you can make it to the end and beat the super boss, you get yourself a nice little reward badge at the end too, if you can actually make it down there, because boy, if like floor 80 onwards just gets ridiculous. It's crazy. But anyway, all that being said, like I said before, this is one of the games that I remember being really excited for growing up, and probably one of the games that I've been the most excited for in my life, if I'm being completely honest. I remember when Nintendo Power first started talking about it, when the website went up and you guys see some of these early images, you just see the giant dragon hooktail, you saw the 1,000-year door. It was just so exciting to see this stuff. So it's like, oh, this is so cool. It's what I was hoping from a Paper Mario sequel, and it was just so mind-blowing back in the day. This is one that I've replayed a ton of from my GameCube copy, and like I said before, I just recently played through the remake that came out a few months ago. Got that for my birthday, so that was a cool surprise. But I've played the original enough that I've had at least one playthrough with every possible Yoshi color, and I've never really gotten tired of this game, no matter how many times I've gone back to replay it. Because you always kind of learn something new, with whether it's the combat or a detail from a character, because there's a lot of changing dialogue in this game too. So this game was really a great improvement on the original Nintendo 64 games formula, and it introduced a lot of fun new characters and locations, and it made combat really cool to figure out and to master. And, like I just said, you kind of learn some new stuff, too, as you play, or if you watch stuff that other people have discovered, you're like, okay. But I don't want to keep rambling at this point, so I'll just finish off by saying that I would call this one of my favorite Mario games, one of my favorite RPGs, and one of my favorite video games in general. So got a lot of love for this one, and that's all I really gotta say. I think TTYD is a fantastic game. Absolutely love it.
Interesting. This seems like one that I could probably get from the library, just like I got the finally played Super Mario RPG earlier this year. This feels like one I should probably try. I know I am on the fuck Mario side of everything, but they're good games. That's just not usually for me. I got to try one. One of them will be.
Well, the good news is if you do decide to play it, there are some badges that you can equip on Mario that will change his appearance a bit. So you can get like a Wario one, so he's got Wario clothes. Eventually, you don't get it until Chapter 6, unfortunately, but you do get a Luigi one. And guess what happens if you happen to wear both of those outfit-changing badges at the same time?
Are you telling me?
Yep. You have to wait a while, unfortunately, but yes, you can dress as your favorite purple boy.
Oh, you just said the magic words.
I was going to say, I'm looking at him right now, sitting on my shelf, sitting on top of Westy.
And in the distance,
man,
Platty heard a faint. But yeah, it's a. This
That's
is one
a
of those
fun thing,
games
then.
too,
Yeah.
where some people are like, "Oh, it's overrated" and stuff, and like I'll admit, I do have a lot of fond memories of this one. I think it's a pretty great game. But I'm not going to be someone who's like, oh, it's the only good Paper Mario. No. Everyone's got their own different tastes on that stuff. But this is just one of those games that, personally, for me, it's just like a personal 10 out of 10. So that's why I got a lot of love for it.
Interesting. All right. Well, you've kicked off 2004. Well, we'll keep the ball rolling. Pendy, what do you got for us?
So the first game I have is Mega Man X Command Mission. Now, typically, if you take any kind of IP that I really like and throw it into a turn-based RPG, I'm there for it. And Mega Man X Command Mission is no exception. This game came out in Japan in July of 2004 for the PS2 and GameCube, with a North American release in September, and was developed by Capcom. The plot revolves around Mega Man X leading a resistance movement against maverick robots that have taken over a city where mining of an element called force metal takes place. The character and enemy designs for this game are fantastic and include Mega Man X series regulars such as, and I know this is a shocking revelation, Mega Man X and Zero, all of which are complemented by cel-shaded graphics. You can gather up to 7 party members and can fight with 3 of them at any time in battles. Now, what's great about how they set this up is that you can switch out different characters in battle with no penalty whatsoever. Besides regular and sub-attacks, each character has an action trigger attack that has their own unique button presses to achieve maximum effect. Each character also can go into hyper mode for a temporary amount of turns that enhances all your stats and dramatically changes your character's design to reflect it. And once you do have 3 characters at once, you can also trigger a 3-character simultaneous attack called Final Strike as a finishing move against enemies once you weaken them enough to do it. Pulling this off will give you more Force Metal Energy as a reward. Force Metal Energy is used with other ingredients to make Force Metal add-ons for each of your characters that can be used to boost stats, increase resistance to status changes, and elemental attacks. How you equip these is limited by what's called an erosion factor. Equip too many over your character's erosions resistance, and you'll have negative effects from it. Now, like with most RPGs and battles, you'll get experience to level up your characters and money in this game called Zenny to buy various equipment and items. During the battles, you also get to see the turn order of your characters and enemies, so that's always a plus that I like. As you explore the world, you'll find abandoned robots that can be reactivated and used to farm the area for rare items, information, and Zenny. If you like collecting items, if you're one of those collector types in games, this game has a lot of optional items you can find in the world through your own exploration as well. Everything from finding items to change your look to a demo of Mega Man X8. The environments you explore can be interesting as they involve various obstacles to avoid, along with puzzles and treasure. However, this is my only complaint of the game. The look of the environment gets a little bland over time. The entire game takes place in this one robot city, so there isn't a ton of variation between environments. Despite this one flaw, I really loved the game overall. There's a lot of variation in the combat, the story was fun, and it had good characters. The game was developed by the team responsible for some of the other Mega Man X games and some of the Breath of Fire games, and it shows with a nice polish it has to it. I loved engaging with Mega Man X and Zero in a turn-based combat world. It was a lot of fun.
Interesting. I really did not know that Mega Man had a turn-based game.
Yeah, it was a one-off. It's something that they didn't continue. I think I think this is one of Barurian's favorites as well. He's a big Mega Man guy, and I know he likes this game too.
I was gonna say I'm surprised we have not heard about it from him.
Oh, if you ask him about it, he'll go on it. He'll go on about it.
We haven't just got to that one. There's so many Mega Man games.
Right?
Another podcast I listened to, one of the co-hosts made it his mission to play every Mega Man game in his year. And I remember by summer it was like he was in the 20s or something.
Yeah, because you've got the mainline games, you got the X games, which became the mainline games. You've got the Battle Network. You've got
there were like
one-offs.
6 of them at least.
There's a soccer game. Like there's almost everything.
Yeah, I kept hearing him week after week talk, just for a couple minutes about, I beat this one and this one, and this one. And by summer it slowed down to like one game every 2 weeks because it started to get, this is like a 20-hour game. I was just looking this one up, and not a platformer and everything. So interesting. Came out for PlayStation 2 as well.
Yes.
I see. All right. Oh, look at that. RP Gamer gave it a 3.5 out of 5. That's our
Good for them.
Decent, better than average score.
Yeah, it gets. I think Metacritic has it around like the 70s,
and 70,
high 70s, something like that.
No, low 70s.
Low 70s. So it's not everybody's
70. Yeah,
it's not everybody's cup of tea, and some people think it's a little bit generic. But I really liked it. I was a big Mega Man fan, and I loved having to do this turn-based combat system with the characters. I thought it was fun, and it had great stories, and it looked pretty good for the most part.
Petition to shorten turn-based combat to turn-bat from now on.
So this came out right around when Final Fantasy X came up. That's what reading. That's what maybe some of the reviews were a little bit lower. People comparing it to that
by comparison.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good little RPG. It's fun.
But no, I mean, you like Mega Man, you like turn-based battles. There you go.
And they did a pretty good job of it, I thought.
All right. Well, we've had our P. Let's have some B. Bluestar. What game are you going to talk about first? Games?
So 2004 goes all the way back to before young Bluestar discovered RPGs. So this was still my PC gaming era when I was, just kind of running around at like 7 years old or something. And the first game that I have to talk about, it's kind of it's 2 games, but they kind of have similar vibes, so I'm combining them together, even though I don't think they were made by the same company. But that is Zoo Tycoon 2 and Zoo Vet. And oh my gosh, I spent so many hours playing these games. Zoo Vet was kind of I want to say it's kind of like a point-and-click adventure, but basically you're just doing a bunch of different exams on different animals, and you have to figure out, what's wrong with them, and you find out that the penguin, it doesn't actually have a mass. It doesn't have a weird mass growing in its stomach. It's pregnant and it's gonna lay an egg, and you stitch up the wounds on the giraffe's neck and things like that, and for a young girl who did not like human society, anything where I could be around animals, even virtually, was A+ in my book. Zoo Tycoon 2 was, you probably have heard of Roller Coaster Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon 1. It's the same kind of thing where you're building a zoo and you can put animals in it, and the idea is to attract guests and sort of make a successful operation out of it, so that you can cover your operating costs. But I never did any of that. I played on freeform mode, and I just got a bunch of animals, and I made them little paradises and let them have lots of babies, and so that I got to pet the baby animals and feed them and watch them play with stuff. The guests were, they would always get upset that there weren't enough trash cans. And then I put more trash cans and they'd fill those up too. So guests are trash, but... Did
you count how many steps they took before they threw stuff in the trash can? Like Disney?
No.
Were you the Disney? No? You weren't the Walt of the Zoo Tycoon?
No. Like I said, I did not pay attention to the guests almost at all. So... Because so Zoo Tycoon 1, I also had that, and I had a couple of expansions for it that allowed you to get like dinosaurs and things like that. And so that game was a lot of fun for that reason, because there was a lot of chaos and it was very hard to contain the dinosaurs. They would keep breaking down fences and go terrorize people. But Zoo Tycoon 1 did not have an unlimited money mode.
Actually, it kind of sort of did.
Kind of sort of did?
There was a cheat where if you held down Shift and 4, you would just steadily increment money, but it would like break all your fences and stuff. So if you just did that at the start of the campaign before you put any fences down, you could just give yourself as much money as you wanted.
7-year-old Bluestar would never cheat, but that is really interesting. I did not know that.
I don't know how I found it out. I found it out at some point. Another thing we did is that we also had the dinosaur expansion, and one day me and Joe, we made a maze and just put a whole bunch of animals in it, and the Sasquatch won.
Cage fighting.
Also, penguins eat giraffes.
Interesting. All the things that I never knew. I just wanted to make happy little exhibits for my happy little animals.
Yeah, we just like messing around with it. It's like looking back at it, I understand why, because it's like, oh, the penguin's classified as a carnivore because it eats fish. But it's like at the time, we didn't understand. It was just so weird.
Yeah, that is a little strange, but
I'm just thinking of Penguins of Madagascar and Kowalski yelling, "Kowalski, prepare the giraffes!" Hey, Blue, for Zoo Vet, could the animals die?
that is a good question that I
That'd
was
be
thinking about
traumatizing.
as I was like figuring it out. I don't think so.
Oh, it's very, very kid friendly.
Yeah, it was very kid friendly. I mean, it could just be that I was perfect, but I don't think I ever had a scenario that I like failed. I remember like one of the really hard things was that you had to flip the wing of a baby flamingo so that he wouldn't fly away, which like poor baby flamingo, but that was what the game told me to do. And it was very hard to do because finding the right place to do it, it was like a very finicky placement that you had to click. But yeah, I don't think anything actually could be failed because you had, your character that was doing things, but there were also like all sorts of other texts and things. And so if you click on the wrong thing, I'm pretty sure someone would be like, "Are you sure you want to do that? That doesn't sound right." But yeah, I did not do my research on how badly you can fail do that.
Alrighty, so that wraps them up.
That wraps them up. It's a masterpiece.
All
What
right.
can I say?
Excellent. I hope we're mainly talking about good games. I mean, last time we went through a lot. This time you got to pick, so pick the good ones. All right, talking about picking games, pick a good one. We've done the PB. We're down to the J. Jay, what did you pick?
So my 2004 game was Pikmin 2. This is probably my favorite game of all time. Like Yangus, with Paper Mario, I revisit this all the time.
I will say, though, with all of that build up that Platty came into, it would have been really funny if you just went to your other game instead. Continue telling us about Pikmin.
So
Thank you, Jay.
I mean, we'll get to the other game eventually. Don't worry about it. So Pikmin 2 is a direct sequel to Pikmin 1. After Captain Almar has rebuilt his ship and went home, he's like, "Oh yeah, while you were gone, we sent this other guy, Louis, to try and do your job. He messed it up real bad. We need money, like yesterday." So they send you back to the planet because there's all these artifacts that they can sell for treasure. And you still have the time limit from the first game, but there's no limit to how many days you can play. And Child J definitely took advantage of that, which I'll get into in a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about is the treasures themselves, which are all like household items. And the real cool thing about it is depending on which version you play, there's one of 4 different sets of treasures, because the original GameCube and the Wii release had like all like real name brand objects like Duracell batteries or Yoo-Hoo bottle caps that were different brands depending on where in the world you were from. And then the Switch remake, which came out fairly recently, got rid of all the name brand things and replaced it like generic brands. So that's like a whole nother set of fun things to discover. One of the things that the J with an infinite time did was after you've collected pretty much everything, you have like 23,000 of the game's currency. They call them Pokos. And it's like, that's a weird number. I want a round number. So I grinded up monsters in the caves until I eventually got to 30,000. It took like 3 weeks of real time. But another thing I did was get as many Pikmin as possible. I was not satisfied until I had 10,000 for some reason. And in doing that, I learned a little bit how the game worked at like an under the hood level, which nowadays, thanks to a very impressive modding scene, we know pretty much everything about how this game works. There's challenge runs where you try to beat the game with only 35 Pikmin total. There's a really impressive modding scene, entire new content and stuff like that. One thing I want to shout out is this mod called Colossal Caverns. It's one super massive single floor dungeon that has every enemy and treasure in the game.
Jeez.
It really is a masterpiece. I don't know what else you need to say.
That sounds huge.
It's colossal.
Wow.
And it's downright evil when you start coming across stuff like Man at Legs and all these other like super evil bosses. Because this is a hard game, man. This is a sequel that really pumps the difficulty up.
Another thing about the modding scene, now that you mentioned Man at Legs, there's this one mod where they make more varieties of Man at Legs, and plenty of them are cursed. For example, one of them is a Pikman's onion on legs that when you approach it, starts walking around and spitting out seeds, and then it explodes.
Yep. Yeah, this was the first Pikmin game that I played back in the day. I remember being pretty excited for it too, and it was just, but man, this is a hard game. I kind of wish I played the first one before I played this one.
It's a very hard game. It's one of the few games I could think of where they actively want to kill you in real life. Like,
it's such an accurate way to describe it. It really is.
Because they'll be like, there's this one floor where it's this long, winding maze. And you start at one end, and there's a couple of treasures at the other end. There's a whole bunch of bombs and spiders carrying bombs across that winding path. As you walk past, more drop down, and as you carry the treasure back, even more drop down.
There's spiders with bombs. That also sounds traumatizing.
Yeah, those are the volatile dweevils, and if you come across those things, you better run for your life.
Yeah, because they'll start coming after you, and they don't care what happens to themselves. They just want to inflict death.
Yep. There's a lot of really scary enemies in this game, actually. One of the two of the scariest ones, and I'm sure Jay would agree, are the Gatling Groink and the Spotty Bullbear, because those are the only two enemies in the game that if you do not remove them from the field in some way, they will just they will literally restore all of their health and then just get right back up and start chasing after you again.
They also both are wanderers, meaning they'll just patrol the area and eventually make their way towards you.
Yep. Bull bears will come and hunt you down, and they usually bring like 5 or 6 little dwarf bull bears with them too, so you got a whole bunch of enemies to deal with if one of them catches wind of you.
Yeah, and going back to like how we like have learned a lot about like how the mechanics work is that the little dwarf bull bears will actively seek out the parent and follow it. So like it'll start with like 1 or 2, and there'll probably be like maybe 4 or 5 more babies kind of just hanging around the level.
Yeah,
that'll just sort of like eventually conga line in with the parent.
Yeah, this game does not mess around. I'd also say this is a game that has some kind of creepy enemies to it too. Like, I'm sure, Jay, you have plenty of stories about the water wraith like I do when you go into the submerged castle.
Yeah, the enemy that I dislike the most is the careening Doriki bug. It's like this weird, like, I'm not even sure what kind of bug it is. I want to say a roach, but that's not really right. On these balloons, and it'll pull out bombs because everything needs bombs and just start dropping them from the sky at you.
Yeah, they're evil.
There's actually a very easy way to deal with them. One single purple Pikmin will weigh them down, and they can't shake it off. So you can just leave one purple Pikmin on them, walk away, and eventually there'll be one less Doriki bug on the map.
That's interesting. I didn't know that could happen. That's funny. I didn't know you could just use one purple Pikmin to do that. That's funny.
That's all it takes.
Oh.
It'll take a while, but
one less purple Pikmin as well.
No,
the purple Pikmin will win the fight and eventually carry its body back to base to sell it. But
yeah, purple Pikmin are
stuff like
super
that
powerful.
Yeah, they're also a little bit rarer though. You can only get them in caves.
Yeah,
with these flowers, they only like give you like 5 at a time.
Yeah, but lucky you, there's a treasure in the last area of the game that requires 100 of them to lift it, because otherwise you're not going to move it.
Speaking about modding scene tangentially related to Pikmin, the other hit game, Lethal Company, has a mod that puts in a whole bunch of the Pikmin 2 treasures in there. And one of them is that 1,000-weight barbell that when you put it down, makes the loudest boom. It makes me crack up every time.
Oh, that's funny. That's pretty good.
And another one is Louis, who when you pick him up says his name.
Oh my god. Yeah, Louis is just this was the start. I mean, it's one of those crazy things too, where Louis got introduced in this game, and at first it's like, oh, okay, whatever. He seems kind of out there, but all right. Well, no, as the series went on, he just became worse and worse.
Like,
He is
every
the true villain.
game has made his actions less excusable.
Yes, he is like the true villain. And you know what? To this day, I'm still not sure, Jay, if he was the one controlling the final boss or if the final boss just happened to have him on top of him.
I mean, the game itself kind of hints at that, so...
Yeah, it's just like,
we'll
okay,
take
well,
that
which
word
one
for
do
it.
we believe? It's so weird. Yeah. Like Jay. I got a lot of love for this one too. It's very frustratingly evil at times, but it was a fun game to mess around with back in the day.
I
it was
remember
cool.
one of my friends on Twitter was playing through the challenge mode. I'm like, every time they would post an update, they'd be like, "Are you excited for the Cave of Pain? Do you want to know why it's called the Cave of Pain?"
Yeah,
They knew what they were doing. That's the worst part about it.
Yes, those challenge maps. Oh my god, they're so evil.
The Cave of Pain is named that for a very good reason.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Never picked up one of these games. Never pick them.
Never picked up one.
Nope.
They're all on Twitch now, so
Yeah, I've heard you guys. Cheap. I have heard many talkings. What, 3 came out last year, wasn't it?
That's 4.
Or 4. 4. Okay.
4 came out last year.
Look, I knew 1 came out. I'm already off on my numbering.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
We had 3 on the Wii, but I don't think we got very far. I usually get really stressed out with time limits, so that immediately was just like, bleh. And
well, the thing with 2's time limit is there's a limit to how much you can do in one day, but there's no limit to how many days you play.
Yeah, because like I think when I first played the game, it took me to like day 20 or 25 before I got the 10,000 thing paid off.
Yeah.
And what's funny though is
now,
that if you do
now I can do it in 7.
Yeah, but that's because you play this game all the time. You can speedrun this game with your eyes closed, probably.
I mean, my first time took me 30, so don't feel too bad.
Yeah. It is funny though, because if you let the game take a while, like to pay off the initial 10,000 Pokos, the president of Hocotate Freight, he'll end up having to go hide out and live under a bridge, and he'll befriend these animals, and you get to hear his stories about that and all of the end of day letters that you get back from home.
And then he gets caught by debt collectors.
He does. It starts as a nice, wholesome little story. He's befriended these animals, and then all of a sudden he's like, I got found by the debt collectors. Olimar, hurry up.
Like, if you let that part play out, some of the stuff is really dark.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually a really cool animation about it. I'll link it to you guys in the chat. That's enough for me for now.
Alrighty. Well, we've come to the other slice of bread. That'd be me here at the bottom. Or at the top. I don't know. It depends on how you put your peanut butter and jelly sandwich together. If the jelly goes on last or first, or you just squish them all together. But, aside from that metaphor, the first game, and I can't believe this is 20 years old at this point, The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. It's the, I know in the grand scheme of what Falcom considers their Legend of Heroes game, it's the 6th or 7th, but really it's the sub-series that is going on right now, this whole Kaseki sub-series. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky started, there's 3 Trails in the Sky, 2 Crossbell games, 4 Cold Steel games, a wrap-up game on top of that, Trails into Reverie, and we are now getting yet another sub-series starting. It's already came out just this past summer, but all of these start one continuous narrative that starts with Trails in the Sky. And Yangus, I went back and looked because a memory popped up on my Google Photos memories, and it was almost exactly 7 years ago. It was August of 2017 that we started playing this together on our Vitas. This was the first game that you and I tried to race to finish. And the first and the one that we both already started to, you pulled out of this race, maybe not very quickly, but you pulled out pretty after a while. Then the next time I pulled out, and it started our races that never ended, really.
Yep.
For quite a few years. And
then we eventually got to the point where we actually both were playing the game. Both played the game. With what was it, Bravely Default too?
Yes, yeah. Oh, but we did like 2 of them at that point. What we're trying to do.
The second one was Like a Dragon.
Right, yeah, and I pulled out of that one. So I did the Bravely, not the Like a Dragon all the way. But such shame on my part. But not up for this one. Just about the second or third game I'd played on my Vita. I played Persona 4 Golden when I got it, and maybe 1 or 2 little small games like Dragon Fantasy or something. But this was, the next one after Persona 4 Golden that I was like, yes, I really want to get into the series. What can I do with this series? And holy crap. I loved it. I've now played through all 9 games in the main series. I got Trails into Reverie, the 10th wrap-up game, sitting in my bedside table drawer. I'll get to that next year before my other podcast forces me to talk about it. But then I just finished up Cold Steel 4 like 2 months ago. But this starts, like I said, a series of 9 games, or 10 if you count the wrap-up one. Complete narrative. This starts with Estelle, is it Bright or Blight? Estelle Blight? Bright? Forgot her name, but Estelle and her Bright. There we go.
It's Bright. Yep.
And her kind of adopted brother. What was his name? Gosh, good job me taking lots of notes on here.
It's Joshua.
But Joshua, Estelle and Joshua, that's the two. My gosh, they pop up in all the games. But they start off, and Estelle wants to follow in her father's footsteps and become a bracer, which basically is just an excuse for you to have to do a bunch of little missions around town. I mean, they literally give you the reason to go save the cat in the tree by the one, and you're not exactly fighting God by the end, but, it's a little bit more grounded, this game, than that. Although, you go there by the end of the series. This game was actually half of a pair because Trails in the Sky, and then there was Trails in the Sky second chapter, because this game ends on like a cliffhanger, ledge hanger. Actually, I think it's a balcony hanger because it's like right on the balcony at the end of defeating somebody near the Queen's castle or something like that. And at that point, it's really just the midpoint of a bigger story for Trails in the Sky 1 and 2. It really introduces a lot of the world. It introduces a battle system that I absolutely love. It's turn-based, but with movement. You can move around, and depending on where you move, you've got area of effects. So if you get closer, Shazarazard, I believe, is one of the other people that plays quite a bit with Estelle in this game, and she's got a whip, so she'll have an area of effect. And if she's off to the left, she could whip like 5 people off to the left. Or you have Oliver in this one, and he's got a gun, and he could shoot in a straight line. So if you're lined up with other characters, you can do that. It initially made me really think of combat from the Grandia series, and I think that's what really early on in this series hooked me. And by the time you get 3 or 4 games into it, you're like not thinking this is the Grandia system at all, but the base kind of is movement, area of effect, and one of the more fun things other than just standard, you got magic here. They're called the arts. They don't have crafts in this one. This is kind of early on. Crafts come later games. But the way that they use magic in this games, the setting of the world is I guess almost an industrial revolution or an electronics revolution is coming about. And like it's going from Middle Ages to like the 60s or 70s in our timeline really fast. They're all of a sudden like, hey, this guy discovered orbital energy, and now we've got everything. We're flying in planes and blimps and doing a lot of stuff, but also
technology too.
Yeah.
A lot of steampunk.
Yep, they got tanks, but you go around the towns and they're pretty rural. This game especially for Liberal. It's not exactly liberal, but Liberal, I believe, is how they pronounce it in the later games. But yeah, you're just going town to town, solving problems, checking in on the bracer guilds, like, hey, what can I do? Oh, this needs this needs that. Then you find out, the mayor's involved in a real estate scheme, so got to take care of the mayor. There's always a little bit of magical element going around here because like a lot of JRPGs, hey, there was a civilization 1,000 years ago that just kind of left these artifacts around. Guess what happens? They kind of work like magic, like our new Orbital stuff. I actually preferred these games the way the Orbital system works, because to get magic spells in all these games, you have to load out. So it looks kind of like a cell phone in the later games, but they have these Orbital wristbands or whatever, and you have to place little orbments in it to make different spells pop up. And this one really focuses on like, okay, so you've got a line of 3 and you got a line of 4, and if you put 3 red ones in a row, you get more fire spells and even higher fire spells. it was really easy to, well, maybe not easy, but it was fun to break these games and like have one or two people with incredible orbital loadouts in them. As they got farther on, each little crystal that you put in didn't really affect overall everything, but it was more like there's one spell on here and there's one spell on here. But I like the early games when I could really just stack up a bunch of good ones in a row and suddenly have like access to every water spell in the entire game. But yeah, it's just, I mean, a fun little, if you want to know what a JRPG is, I think just like Dragon Quest, this first one is a JRPG-ass JRPG. Go town to town, solve problems. There's a bigger thing going on in the world. You kind of don't solve it in this one. You got to play first chapter and second chapter together to get a whole tale. But I mean, this game goes 50, 60 hours. I read the initial plan was to make one game, but they were like, holy cow, we've put so much into this. We got to split it up. And Estelle and Joshua are not my favorite heroes of this whole thing, but they're good. They're good JRPG heroes. There's a good story here from beginning to end, and Joshua goes through quite the story arc. Estelle's on a pretty, I don't know if she's got an arc. She's just a straight line. Like, I'm constantly getting better. It's fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd say my only other memory with this was 7 years ago. And actually, let's see, 7 years minus 6 days. I remember playing this in the closet almost all night because the worst hurricane that we'd had pass through here since we moved about 10 years ago came through. Ended up not doing much more than knocking about 20 things off our roof and getting us a nice new $20,000 roof for only about $4,000 through insurance. So thanks, Hurricane Irma. Appreciate that. And didn't knock down a tree. So that was nice. And I got to stay up all night huddling in the closet with sleeping baby, sleeping other kid. And I just lay there and played maybe 10 hours of Trails in the Sky that night. Got through a good chunk of it. So what were you going to say about this, Yangus?
Well, I was going to say just real quick, like Platty said, we both started it, but I kind of dropped off because I was kind of going through some personal stuff at the time, so I really wasn't in the right mindset to play it. I've revisited the game, though, a few years after that, and I really enjoyed playing through it. I never did beat it, but I got pretty far. I need to go back one of these days and actually try and finish it, because I got to, like, the fourth section, I think. It was around. It was after the point where, like, you help the one girl who I guess is secretly like of nobility of something.
She's the princess. Yep.
Yeah.
Claudia,
yeah, that's it.
Claudia, I want to say purple hair.
Yep. See, that one you remember because she had purple.
Yep. Well, but I mean, I wouldn't say she played a big part, but she was one of the main leaders in Cold Steel 4 that you had to deal with. So I just saw her recently.
Okay.
We ran into each other.
Yeah. I was gonna ask though, like, since I never have beaten this one, without too much for spoilers, does this game like reveal who one of the bad guys is of the overall arcing villain group Ouroboros?
I'll be honest, I don't know the head Grandmaster of Ouroboros yet, and I played 9 games.
No.
Does it introduce one? Yeah, you get one or two in like every game.
Okay.
You start getting more. Yeah, they don't stay hidden too long.
Okay. Because the one that I'm thinking of, without spoiling too much, in case anybody here on the podcast wants to play it, the one that I'm thinking of was a guy who I think it was a guy, maybe, but it was a person that you would run into every now and then, who was an investigator of sorts. Not like an actual investigator, but someone that would investigate things, if you know what I mean.
I believe the one you're talking about, that comes to a head by the end of the second game, yeah.
Okay. Because
you do get a lot of revelations at the beginning of the first game, which leads to the cliffhanger at the end. And then, yeah, I mean, the stuff in Librel does wrap up very nicely in the first 2 Trails in the Sky games. So yes, the person you're talking about does get dealt with.
Okay, because that was the one where I was kind of looking more into that organization. That really surprised me because I'm like, I never really put too much thought into that character, but then seeing that, it's like, okay. And it was so interesting to see how, oh goodness, what did it say? It was something about how they felt the need to deal with that, and like everybody in that organization did not like this person at all. Because whatever I read, like, it didn't go too much into spoilers, but it talked about how a lot of the members of that organization are just like, yeah, we don't like this guy either. He's just here because he kind of is. we wish he wasn't around, but we got to deal with him because he's part of it.
And you know what? A lot of that, the Bad Guy Ouroboros organization, you go through all these games, all 9 games, and they're all like just freelancers. They're a bunch of just bad people that hang out together and, kind of get access to technology and stuff just because they decided to join up. But I think even at the end of Cold Steel 4, when somebody's that you fight and defeat decides like, well, screw it. If they're going to beat me, I might as well just join the bad guys. And like, I think one of his one question is, I can still just do whatever I want, right? And they're like, yeah, that's what it's all about. It's about being a group of bad guys. And yeah, sometimes we work on this grand scheme. We've had like 5 years and nothing's really come of it. But, in the meantime, we just do whatever nasty shit we want. It's a ragtag group of bad guys. Yep. It's an interesting group. All right. So we have gone through the list once. Yangus, you want to start off our second pass through, and then I'll be tricky and call on other people in different orders.
Ooh, sneaky. Just like the members of Ouroboros. Oh my god.
Exactly.
Well, all right. I will go on to my next one, which, talking about an organization that's a bunch of freelancers, kind of ties in a little bit with this one because you play as part of a group who can all go off and explore different areas. And that game is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. This is a game that came out on the Game Boy Advance. It was the second of the Kirby games to come out on the system. And this was actually the first 4-player Kirby game. Quick little synopsis on the story. The story has the titular Amazing Mirror being destroyed by an unknown swordsman, with Meta Knight going to investigate. Meanwhile, Kirby is attacked by our mysterious swordsman and is suddenly turned into 4 separate Kirbys. The 4 give chase and eventually wind up in the mirror world. The hunt then begins to restore the Amazing Mirror by collecting its pieces from across the lands, all the while avoiding this mysterious swordsman and another mysterious character who looks an awful lot like our heroes for some reason. So, yeah, this is the first Kirby game that featured 4 players that you originally have to use with either the GameCube's link ports, but you could like plug your Game Boy Advances into that and play it that way on like the TV, or you would just use the classic link cables to connect up to 4 different Game Boy Advances together to play through the game. So this is the one and only Kirby game that's actually styled after a Metroidvania, or maybe we should call it a Kirbyvania. Well, anyway, the 4 Kirbys all have access to Kirby's default moveset, so you can swallow up enemies to gain new abilities. You can jump and hover and all that good stuff that Kirby can normally do. But the benefit is, with there being 4 of you, you can now work together to move giant blocks, solve switch puzzles, and other such problems that you might come across. Or just travel through the world and beat up all the bosses and bad guys together. You can play solo or with friends via the link cables like I was talking about, and whichever way you play, you could use Kirby's cell phone, which apparently he now has one, so don't know how he got that, but
hey, by 2004 we all had one, Yangus.
It's true. I didn't know that Dreamland had such a good cell phone coverage because, man, this thing works in other worlds even. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's
like a dream.
Whatever.
But yeah, so Kirby is able to use this special cell phone in order to call up the help of the other Kirbys, or if let's say you're playing with your buddy, he comes across something he can't beat himself, he can use that to call up you and the other like AI controlled Kirbys, and you can all show up then to help him out. Or you can use the phone by pushing, I believe it's the R button, because you use the L button to call, and the R button can return you to the hub. So that way, then you can go back there and possibly work your way to another spot to help your friends, or you need to go back and get a certain power up or something. Unlike a lot of other Metroidvanias, though, this game doesn't have a lot of like abilities and power ups locked behind making certain advancements. Like, this isn't going to be like a Metroid game, for instance, where you have to get to a certain point to gain access to missiles, or you have to get to a certain point to start using super bombs and things like that. But there are unlockables that you can get by going around and finding all of the different treasure chests. So biggest one is, as you're exploring, there are various warp points to quickly get you across the various lands of the mirror world. And what's cool too is that when you activate one of these, it does show a quick little cutscene to show like how it connects back to the central hub area. So it's a good little way to show you like, hey, this will connect you to here, and then you can use that connection to get back to here, or you can go over this way. So it's kind of nice that they do that real quick for you. And of course, you get maps of each of the areas that you go into. Game does do a good job of showcasing like what sort of rooms are going to be like big treasure rooms and what ones are going to be like just kind of your regular room you walk through. Usually the rooms that on the map that you'll get as you complete different areas and find the big chests and stuff, they'll have little indicators to be like, oh, this is like when I say big room, like it's like represented by a large box, and it's like, hey, here's a room. You've been to this one. If it's flashing, you've gotten everything. If it's just like a solid yellow, there still might be something in there you need to get. Or if it's orange, you have not been there before. So pretty easy to understand how it all works. But as you explore, find all these treasure chests, you can find helpful things like a few health increasing items. You find the music player and the various sound sheets to listen to the different music in the game. And you also can get a large number of color sprays, so you can play as whatever colored Kirby you want to. My personal favorite would always to go as the sea blue one or as the forest green, because both of them were a dark shade of blue and green respectively, and they just looked really cool on Kirby. I believe they also had one that was reminiscent of the Game Boy color scheme for Kirby too, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, blue Kirby. Woo woo woo.
Yeah. And so
You knew that was coming.
Yep. But yeah, there's
I find it. I like that you've had multicolored Kirbys and multicolored Yoshis. I can't wait to hear what your third game of colorfulness is.
Oh, don't you
later.
worry, that one gets real colorful.
All right,
it's a running theme. But yeah, so there's not like power-ups necessarily locked behind you doing a lot of this exploration, like having to go out of your way like a Metroid or a Castlevania, but there are some nice little things you can get from exploring, so it's worth doing it. Finally, though, your big thing that you're collecting is all the mirror shards from a lot of the bosses, which is kind of crazy. Like, this is one of the Kirby games that has a lot of unique enemies and bosses that really don't reappear much in the series. Like, there's, I think what the idea is that there's supposed to be like these mirror/opposite versions of the normal sort of bosses you would fight in a Kirby game. Like, the one that always stands out to me is the Golem King, who is very reminiscent of Wispy Woods, if you've played other Kirby games. And it's kind of a shame that some of these bosses don't appear more, because there's some actually pretty cool designs in this game for a lot of these bosses. But you get all your mirror shard pieces, you complete the big mirror in the hub area, and you end up going into it to confront the mystery swordsman, who was actually Dark Meta Knight, and his master, Dark Mind.
I knew those Meta Knights had some problems.
I know. I know. It's one of those things, too, where the game is just like, it's kind of cool how it does it, because at first you think it is the actual Meta Knight who keeps trying to fight you, because Kirby and him have had this what do they call that? Not rival. Well, it's rivalry. What do they call that? Where it's like a friendly rivalry, back and forth with each other, depending on the game. And you're thinking, okay, Meta Knight actually kind of turned on everybody again, and it's like, oh, no, it's a Dark Meta Knight. See, he's wearing gray instead of blue. That means he's evil. But yeah, you fight him and his master, Dark Mind. I actually really like Dark Mind as a villain character, even though he doesn't have a whole lot of personality by any means. But it's cool how he's essentially a combination of two of Kirby's oldest foes, Nightmare and the Dark Matter. Kind of a combination of the two if you brought certain elements together. You fight each form of Dark Mind, eventually taking on his actual form without all of his armor. And you actually get to finish him off in kind of a cool way where it's a top-down shooter style, with each of the Kirbys riding around on their own little warp stars, blasting away at him and all the projectiles flying at them. Let's see, where was I at my note? Oh, yeah. So, quick fun facts about this game, too. This was actually the first Kirby game to feature Master Hand and Crazy Hand as guest appearances from the Super Smash Bros. Series, because at the time, HAL Laboratories, who is the main creator of Kirby, were the main creators of Smash Bros. Still at this point. So that was a cool surprise to see them pop up. And they even appear as like the last boss of the 9th area of the game, the Candy Constellation. And if you can beat either one of them and have Kirby swallow them up, you gain access to his Smash Brothers moveset as a special power-up. And hey, if that weren't enough for you, you can eventually unlock Meta Knight's sword as a power-up too, complete with all the tools to solve most of the puzzles in the game if you're trying to get 100%, but you're having some difficulties. So this is one that I played a lot as a kid, a lot on road trips. I would play this one. Eventually got to 100%. It was one of those games, too, that I remember. This was one of the first times that I actually went and got a game when it was like brand new when it came out. So that was pretty exciting. I played and fully beat the game single player, but it was still cool. It was still cool to work with the other Kirbys to defeat bosses or helping them solve some of the problems in the world. like the puzzles. I mean, the AI is not the best for them, unfortunately, and there's one chest in particular that was just so difficult to get because there's very little room for you to stand in with one of the other Kirbys, and it's just next to impossible to get the block moved because you need at least two of you to move it. It's just, I don't know why they designed that part that they did in the fourth area, but whatever. Eventually got it. But it's still pretty doable with the AI characters, and it's fun to work together with them. Or, of course, you work with buddies, which you can now do a lot easier if you have a Switch and you have the Game Boy Advance thing, because now you can just play online. You don't need all these expensive link cables and all this stuff. So much easier than it used to be. Visually, this is also one of my favorite games from the series. As it, Nightmare and Dreamland, they have such great art styles, especially for a lot of the backgrounds. There's some really cool art. And it's cool to see that people have been able to get these images pulled by themselves to, if you wanted to have like the background for like the Moonlit Castle areas or for the Radish Ruins and some of these other places from the games. Very cool art style to it. And as always, it's a Kirby soundtrack that goes way harder than it needs to. I absolutely love the final fight theme with Dark Mind when he's revealed his true form. It just gets so intimidating and just so like echoey. And it's like, dude, this is just a Game Boy Advance game. Why are you going so hard? It's so crazy. I love it. But everything really complements the experience on this one. And while it is a little bit of an oddball in the series, since it's the one and only Kirby-vania game, I really like this one a lot, and I've enjoyed replaying it every few years. Not always to 100% completion, just because there's some really evil treasure chests to try and get, but it's a fun game, and I totally recommend this one if you have not played this particular entry of the Kirby series. Any of you guys had any experience with this one before?
I've played it once, but never with other people.
Well, now you and your brother got to play through it together.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him to get the expansion pass, but he's like, he doesn't see enough value in it. Like the Game Boy games don't really, the Game Boy Advance games rather don't really appeal to him. So I'm like, all right, I get that. Because we're on a family plan.
You should get the game with your brother, and then like with Zoo Tycoon, you can create a maze and have the Kirbys fight each other.
There we go. Yeah, the whole world's a maze. So hey, there you go.
He also doesn't seem to like Castlevania too much, so I don't know how that would go out.
Oh,
amazing!
Damn, it is a fun Kirby game. It's very different from some of the other ones, but that's kind of what gives it a lot of charm too.
I like Missile. Missile's a fun power up.
Oh yeah, that one, and I think this is the one too that had the very elusive mini power up. So like way before Mario ever used the mini power up, it turned Kirby itty bitty tiny. You could squeeze through spots. And it was great too if bosses tried to attack you, because all you had to do was just stand still, and the bosses would completely miss with like their big fancy attacks. It was great.
Alrighty, are we all done with Kirby?
Yep, time to curb your enthusiasm and move on to the next one.
Oh, no, we're not curbing any enthusiasm, because we're talking about the game that Bluestar came here for tonight. We're talking about the game that probably brought Bluestar into our circle of slime timers. So Bluestar, without any other introduction, I'm just going to let you go. Go ahead.
So this next game that I'm going to talk about is one that I don't think any of you have really played before. And I don't know that maybe everybody else likes it very much. I didn't play it in 2004 when it came out. I played it a couple years later, and that game is, I'm totally joking about everything, by the way, because that game is Dragon Quest VIII. Woo!
Woo-hoo!
I mean,
That's the series you grind in, right?
Yeah, with
Well, I mean, I'm doing that right now. Turn
That was
back.
for you, Dwayne. That was for you.
Fight. I mean, at this point, it's a masterpiece. What more can I say? You've heard me go on and on and on and on and on and on about this game. We can't talk about 2004.
I think we've all played it.
Yeah, I made the joke that I didn't think any of you would, but you know, that's yeah.
I've actually never played this one before.
No, Yangus.
Yangus,
what-
I think you'd really appreciate this one.
I
There's
don't
some
know,
characters
man.
in
You
it
might
that I
recognize a
really
name or
think you'd
two.
like.
What was that supposed to mean?
It has a lot of very interesting characters. One of them is real funny.
It has a lot of nose picking, just like you.
Yeah, it's true.
And flower picking.
Oh, flower picking. Oh man, if I need my fix for that, I'll just play some Animal Crossing.
I mean, we could.
Sorry,
talk
that's a
about-
really bad joke.
We could talk about
Really
this
bad.
for hours, but I also don't really know where to start. They know how much I love this game. At least I hope they do at this point, if they've ever heard me speak.
That's a total
Well,
shock to me.
tell us
Let's
how
talk
you got
about how
into
fun
it, and we can
alchemy
wrap it up
is.
quickly.
I think I've told this story before, but I found Dragon Quest VIII in the bargain bin at GameStop for $8. We had just gotten a PS2 as a hand-me-down, and so my parents were like, "Yeah, let's go to GameStop and see what we can find." And we picked out a bunch of games, and Dragon Quest was one of them. So we spent the next couple of weeks, trying them out and different things. And at first, my dad was the one playing, and my brother and I were kind of watching. But then something happened on the second continent, and we walked straight past Angelo and got stuck after doing a scantha because we didn't trigger the flags in the correct order. So we were just kind of wandering around for a little bit. And at one point I was like, I really want to keep going. Let's figure out where the heck we're supposed to go. And even then, I think we did find Angelo eventually, but it didn't then tell you to go to pick him because you didn't just come out. Maybe if we walked into a scantha and walked out of a scantha, it would have triggered that cutscene, but I don't know. But I essentially squinted really hard at the map and I was like, I think I can get down south there and it looks like there's something there. So I guess we're going on an adventure. And so I trekked all the way down there and I'm like, hey, I started to find some things. And that's how that first playthrough of Dragon Quest VIII was saved. But yeah.
I will say for this game, it's definitely of the Dragon Quest series, it's in my top 3. I can't really pick a favorite, but it would be between this, 4, and 11. And I remember when this game came out, I had been kind of disappointed by how Dragon Quest VII looked. And to see it in its full glory and cel-shaded graphics to really bring on Toriyama's artwork was amazing, for one. And I remember I was shocked and amazed that they were actually bringing out some merchandise related to this game. Because remember, there was that blue slime controller that they actually released in America that you could buy. And I got one of those. And even though it's kind of an uncomfortable controller, which is maybe a little bit of an understatement, I didn't care. I mean, it was a turn-based RPG, so you didn't really need to have too much coordination to move around and do whatever. But I played the entire game using that controller. I was so thrilled. I was like, my blue slime controller. Yes, loved it. Loved playing that. Loved getting out my blue slime controller, plugging it in, and starting my Dragon Quest VIII game and just doing the whole thing that way. It was so fun. Yeah, I love another thing I love about this game so much is the cast of characters. I think, and that's another reason why I like 4, 8, and 11 as my top 3, because I think they also have the best characters among all the Dragon Quest games as a unit.
Yeah,
some games they have really good ones, but then they have ones that are kind of forgettable. In Dragon Quest VIII, like the other two that I like so much, I think every single character is pretty good. I get kind of annoyed with Angelo, especially if you like to use party. Was party chat in the original? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Angelo would get really annoying in the party chat. Because if you weren't doing something that was related to the main quest and you're off doing a side quest or whatever the hell you wanted to do, he would always get on your case and be like, what are we doing? This is boring. Stop it. So that kind of annoyed me because I'm a big party chat guy and I like to fill out those characters by seeing what they have to say. But beyond that, everything was super engaging about the story. I love Dulmagus. A little bit disappointed that that version of Dulmagus didn't last the entire game, but there was when he was swapping out between different people that could be very interesting, like the dog or Evil Jessica. So this original version of Dragon Quest VIII, I have a lot of fond memories about playing it, and I loved it so much. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite Dragon Quest games of all time, and one of my favorite video games of all time.
It's my top video game. You can't really. Nothing has topped it yet. I'm still holding out hope that they do some sort of a remaster for Switch that is PS2 graphics and sound chip with all of the 3DS content. That's a little bit wishful thinking. I think Dragon Quest IX is due for a glow up first, but
please.
A girl can hope.
Yeah, and I loved the skill tree system, like how you could pick different weapons and have the different skill trees associated with them, or just like bare knuckles or whatever it was called. I loved how that fisticuffs. Thank you. I love how that system was set up, and that was very enjoyable for me to customize my characters. I had a lot of fun with that too.
My favorite thing was the alchemy, because especially on second, third, fourth, whatever, how many playthroughs we've gone through. If you know how, you could get some really busted stuff really early.
I
and
loved
the Dom-
exploiting alchemy.
When I did my 3DS playthrough, I was able to beat Dalmagus before getting multi-heal because I knew how to make the Coca-Cola cheese.
Ah, see, I usually exploit to get power shields that early, which I suppose I mean, I don't know if those will help as much as Coca-Cola cheese, but they're nice to have.
And this game in the series has one of the best post games of all the Dragon Quest games as well.
Also true.
Yes, I mean, you get to see I won't say, I'm not going to do any spoilers on this, but you get to see the background of Munchie, and just seeing that was amazing within itself.
And also just the hero's origin story. I think.
Oh, definitely.
I think he's the coolest hero, I think.
Yes.
I like the extra ending you get after that too.
That too. I'm a huge fan of that. Gee, I wonder why. But
Oh, and it has one of the most hateable characters in all of Dragon Quest, which is
I love
great.
hating that character.
Yes, no, it's fun. It's fun to hate Prince Charmless. I forget how you pronounce it, but
Charmles is
Prince
the goat.
Charmley of Argonia, and you will get it white.
Charmles is the goat. He's the greatest character.
I'm not ready yet.
yeah,
How
that
could you
was-
dislike Charmles? He's the greatest character in all of Dragon Quest.
He's a twat.
No, he's
It's
a
so
prince.
funny.
Get it right.
I think one of my favorite things about Charmley is you find out about the Puff Puff room because he has like a brochure for it hidden in his room.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the Puff Puff in this game was hilarious too because it had all the jokes depending on which character you sent to the Puff Puff area of the game. That was.
It's
that was
also, I think, the
good.
first one with a visual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Because everything else is they just tell you what happens.
I know 9 had the visual, but obviously 9 came after 8.
Yeah, that's how numbers work.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, and then the arena where you get to battle the monster teams. I really loved that.
That is a very good side quest. It's like just the right amount of in depth.
Yes,
Because like there's a lot you can do with it, but it's not so overwhelming that you just don't want to.
exactly. I totally agree. It's like the perfect amount of difficulty sparsed throughout the game. Though you can kind of do a lot all at once. You do it at your own pace, pretty much.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it is that it wasn't just like, hey, you go to this arena, you get some prizes, but you could actually take your monster team into the field and use that as an extra attack. And I loved that because it made the combat much more diverse by having that extra attack with your different monster teams. So I was a big fan of it.
We exploited it a little
here's
too much,
a
which
real
made us
cool
a little
thing.
under leveled because we just kept calling the monster team or running away because we weren't strong enough to handle the monsters.
Something really
can
cool
lead to
about
that.
the monster teams is when you're fighting that super boss, he has a spell that will kind of like take the hero out of the fight. But if you start the battle by calling your monster teams, it won't work on them. So you can go through the fight with the hero like normal.
Really?
I taught
Yeah, it
you
works in the
something
first
new.
phase.
I think oh, okay. Yeah, I think I do know that ability. I think I just also, it's the whole fight?
I think so.
I
At
don't
least
think
the whole
it's
first
the
phase.
fight. I think it's just a few turns. But
I thought
Yeah,
it was like 2 turns or something.
yeah, basically, it's kind of the inverse of what happens at the very beginning of the game, where Geezer tries to curse you. The curse bounces off the hero, but affects Yangus, so it's kind of the opposite, where it affects the hero, but it won't affect everybody else. We bring in the monster team, it doesn't affect them because they're
I
monsters.
always
So
thought it was
bada
the
bing,
whole
bada boom.
fight, but maybe I just got through that first phase real quick every time.
It's totally possible. I
You
also
got this. You got the touch. You got the power, baby.
I also think
have-
I just kind of
I have 27 pieces of Coca-Cola cheese.
Yep, that too.
I do remember one of the difficulties I had because it's a me problem. I remember exploring the first town and actually getting lost here and there because I was still getting used to 3D environments and games, and I have a horrible sense of direction just naturally. Like you would not want me to be a navigator for anything, and I remember getting into the town and be like, "Oh, where am I again? Oh, what is it? Go around the corner? I don't know where I am. I'm lost again."
To be fair, though, that town is confusing.
Okay, well, I feel better then. But I did get lost a little bit as I was getting used to the environment that it had. But after I got through that first town, I was okay after that, I think.
It's kind of like going to Heliodor in Dragon Quest XI.
Oh, yeah, because that town is massive.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's massive.
I'll tell you what, even on the Pixel version of that one, I was like, holy cow, I've been in this town for an hour. I'm still walking around figuring out rooftops and everything. No matter which way you play that game, it's... Whew.
There's a lot less like extra noise in the 2D version, but yeah, no, it's still big.
And for comedic relief, you just can't beat King Trode.
No,
I mean,
you
Yangus is great too, but King Trode is so funny.
And how they bounce off of one another.
I don't
Yes.
know. I think Mori is number one.
Oh, he's up there too. But yeah, you're right, Blue. Like the dynamic they had between King Trode and Yangus was it was gold. Gold, Jerry. It was gold.
Okay, we can move on from Dragon Quest if you guys want.
I was gonna
or
say,
we can keep talking about it, but we can move on if you guys want.
I was on mute, and as I was saying my joke, so I got to get it in now. Jay, with his cold stuff, I asked him if he cheesed the fight, and there we go.
Apparently he did.
That's a pretty good joke.
Apparently he did. And I was on mute, and I was like, man, they just totally let that one bomb. And then I realized, no, I bombed it myself by not having my microphone on. But
I did the same thing when I fought Evil Jessica. You have another chance. That time it was with scorching hot cheese, though.
Oh, well, she's a hottie. There you go.
That one, it was really useful because of all the ads she summons.
Right, and it's like Jessica is your main way of dealing with that kind of stuff. So not having her for that fight, unless you happen to have like Lightning Storm by then.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite character design. Some of my favorite character designs came out of this game too. And definitely one of my favorite hero designs is 8.
Yes.
Especially after coming off of Bobo Link in 7. 8 was a refreshing change for me.
Oh,
there's a reason why
Bobo
Hughie
Link was one of the
Smash
best heroes. Everyone fucking hates that guy, and it pisses me off. He looks great.
I
What the
love
hell?
him. He's my favorite.
Fucking hero of Dragon Quest VIII looks like he's trying to do his best impression of fucking what's her name from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, April O'Neil.
I love it. The coat and the rag cap and everything. I love it. I love the little gritty look that he has. Although
I think we've brought up
all
the different parts here, but is this the game that has the most Dragon Quest memes and iconic, GIFs and everything? The hero standing there with the bar fight going on in front of his face. Yes, the picture of the, the two slimes with the puff. You got
the Corbline
Charmel's dad.
Underpants dance.
You got the underpants. You've got Vavavoom.
Yep.
I feel like we could rattle off 10 or 12 of these right off the bat, and I don't know if I could do that for any other Dragon Quest game.
I mean, 11 would come close if it didn't pass it, but I think 11 is also a longer game, so maybe there's more stuff there. But 8 did it
Usually
first.
a longer game means there's more stuff.
Yangus with the obvious commentary. Thank you, Yangus, Tony Romo.
Hey, if Blue can do it, I can do it too, man. It's only fair.
All right. Well, as you said, we could get on to Dragon Quest VIII all night here, but we've gone through the BP. Now we need our J again. I realize I left poor J to the third part again.
No, we didn't.
Jay.
No, this was.
Oh no,
it was
I'm
just
not.
Yangus and then butter. There was no
Pendy.
peanut.
Yep, I put everybody in, but all right, Pendy, you're going to talk about the Jessica Garner TV show, right?
Jennifer Garner
is your next game. Jennifer Garner. Sorry, I'm on Jessica from Dragon Quest VIII, but. It's 2004. We must all be watching this TV show.
Exactly. So the next one I'm doing is Alias. And Alias was a video game based on the TV show of the same name that came out in April of 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, with a later follow-up on Windows, and was made by Acclaim Studio Cheltenham out of England and published by Acclaim Entertainment. Full disclosure that this isn't necessarily the best game in the world, as it is somewhat your typical undercooked licensed game. But you have to understand that I was an Alias freak back then. Some of you on this podcast know that when I get into something sometimes, I really get into it, like Dragon Quest Tact or Die or even just Dragon Quest in general. I was the same with Alias. I religiously watched the show when it was on. I was a subscriber to the Alias magazine and collected all 28 issues that were ever published. I have the I have the fancy Alias DVD box set that's in the shape of a key item from the show. I was just enthralled by the double agent spy family drama that was Alias. The concept of the show is that Sidney Bristow, played by Jennifer, not Jessica Garner, is recruited as an agent for the CIA. The twist is she's actually working for a criminal organization called SD6 that is posing as the CIA. The low-level agents think they are actually working for the CIA, but only the high-level agents know what's really going on. She discovers this and becomes a double agent for the actual CIA. The other twist is that her father is a high-level agent for SD6, but is also a double agent for the CIA, hence the family drama part of the show. This is a show that is also very near and dear to my heart because it's something that my mom, who has since passed, really liked too. It's one of those shows that we could watch together, and I have really fond memories of doing that when new episodes would air and then discussing them afterwards. This show made a lot of people very popular, such as Jennifer Garner, Bradley Cooper, and show developer J.J. Abrams. This show also turned me into a big J.J. Abrams fan, who would go on to make, write, and or direct a lot of my other favorite shows and movies, such as Lost, Super 8, and the revamped Star Trek movies. When this video game came out, I was very excited. Too many times, these tie-in games don't involve the cast of whatever show or movie it's based on. Not here. The majority of the cast of the show was involved in this game. For the most part, you'll hear a lot of Jennifer Garner, the protagonist Sydney Bristow, but you'll see other characters like Vaughn Dixon and fan favorite tech nerd Agent Flinkman. The story of the game takes place between episodes 19 and 20 of the second season of the TV show. They really tried to stick within the continuity of the show instead of making some one-off story that wouldn't necessarily fit in anywhere else. The story involves Agent Bristow being called in to find a missing fellow agent and the conspiracy that follows. I won't go into the details, but twists and turns the show was known for. The game is an action-adventure game. You play as Agent Sydney Bristow, and as the name of the show implies, you start out using different aliases and disguises in your missions. As the missions play out, you'll try to use stealth to get around, and sometimes you get to fight your way through various bad guys. There's even some platforming elements to the game. And like what the show was also known for, you can try and use the various environments and items around you to take the bad guys out. So you might slam a guy's head onto a countertop, flip off a wall for a kick, use a broomstick to hit or choke someone out, a lead pipe, wine bottle, various kitchen utensils, along with punches, kicks, grappling moves, and various guns. The only complaint I had about the game is that the fighting controls can be a bit awkward. Well, maybe really awkward. They weren't super fluid. Yeah, they were kind of bad. They weren't super fluid, and special moves were frustrating to pull off sometimes. Other similar games did all of this much better, like Siphon Filter, another third-person action-adventure spy game series from around that era of games. But if you are a big fan of the TV show, it wasn't too bad, and it was great to follow the story voiced by all your favorite actors from the show. The story for the game was even written by one of the show writers, Brian Fraser, with inputs from J.J. Abrams. And the original score for the game was even done by the show's regular composer. Now, I at least implore anyone who's never seen the show before to give it a shot. These days, you can watch it on Disney Plus or Hulu. And if you aren't hooked after one episode, it's probably just not for you. It's not a slow burn, so you get the full feel of the show right away.
Speaking of full disclosure, I completely thought I was a joke that I was introing you in with mentioning the TV show Alias.
Oh, right.
I had no idea that there was that video game. I was like, I've never heard of this game, but I know Alias from the early 2000s. Ha ha ha. I'll make a joke here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Acclaim was, I think Acclaim was known for doing these cheap licensed games and
tie-ins, yeah.
Yeah, but this was okay. I liked it. I like what they did with it. The fighting mechanics were kind of messy, but beyond that, it was a fun time.
Interesting. Yeah, I think this was Jennifer Gardner was a little bit in Felicity back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then this was her big.
Yeah, she kind of started off with Felicity, and then this like really launched her career once Alias hit big.
Yep. Fun. Alrighty. So, Jay, that brings us to your second game.
Yes, I will be talking about a Yoshi game. Yoshi's Topsy Turvy specifically, which apparently came out in 2004.
Who knew?
I always think the DS came out later than it did, and I knew that Topsy Turvy was out after the DS because when you boot it up, it asks if you're playing on a classic Game Boy Advance or either an SP or a DS. And I'm like, I was looking at the list. I'm like, this came out in 2004? That was 2006. When did the DS come out? 2004? What? Anyway, so Yoshi Topsy Turvy is a 2D side-scroller platformer in the same sort of style as Yoshi's Story, but the big gimmick is you can change gravity by tilting your system, which is why it asks whether or not, like, basically, where is the cartridge on your system?
Oh, yeah, that would be important.
Yeah, because the Game Boy, the SP and the DS have it on the bottom, and the classic Advance has it on the top. This is also a game that's really not that much to talk about. It's not very popular. A lot of people don't think it's very good. I've only ever played it the first time when I was way younger, so I'm kind of just going off a memory of a memory. The memory of a memory I do have is that there's a lot of level variety in the game. Like every level will task you with one or two tasks, like get you a medal to progress the game. Like, oh, you got to eat a certain amount of apples, or collect a certain amount of coins, or defeat this many enemies, or don't defeat this many enemies. And so it's like you have a lot going on, and as you get later into the game, it'll start giving you multiple tasks per level. It's a pretty straightforward game. We have a little bit of development history for it. They were trying to get Yoshi's Story itself on the Game Boy Advance, or at least to test the Game Boy Advance's hardware. And they're like, you know what, we could probably turn this into a full game. And that's most likely how Yoshi Topsy Turvy came around. The two biggest things about it is it actually has a little bit of online legacy through memes and such. There's this one still from the end of the game where it's like, but Yoshi was not amused. And it's just like a picture of like Yoshi looking kind of sad in a black void with nothing else going on. And the other thing is that its name in the European release is Yoshi's Universal Gravitation, which is an absolute mouthful.
Oh, good. I'm glad you were going to say that. I was like, I hope Jay says the European name.
It's why, like, European names for some games are really funny. Like, to go on with like Kirby, it's not the 2004 one, it's the one after that, Squeak Squad. For some reason in Europe they changed it to Mouse Attack, and I don't know why.
Wasn't there a different subtitle for Dragon Quest VI as well when it came out in Europe? I'm
No,
vaguely-
originally
there
it was
was.
Realms of Reverie, and then they changed it to Realms of Revelation. I don't know about the Europe release, though. It might have kept the Reverie thing.
The
Oh.
European release did keep Reverie, and Reverie does come back as the Tickington name in Dragon Quest XI.
Oh.
It also I think the European releases all get rid of the number.
Not anymore. They did for a while, though.
Yeah, like 8
Oh.
didn't have the number. I remember that.
Yeah, they stopped.
Well,
doing
wasn't it
that
like the
after a
first
point.
one they got, actually?
It
Yeah,
might have-
8 was the first one they got, so they didn't label it as 8. They just called it Dragon Quest Journey of the Cursed King.
Mhm.
Yep. But yeah, you talking about that too. I was just thinking about that earlier, Jay, with the difference in names. Like because I was thinking about the Wario Land series earlier. In here in America, we got the Wii entry of the series called Wario Land Shake It, and then in Europe
in
they
Europe,
got it
it's
called
the
as
Shake
Wario
Dimension.
Land, the Shake Dimension. And I'm like, I kind of like that one a lot more than Shake It, because Shake It's kind of
I
just
just
like
call it Royal Land 5.
or just
honestly.
call it Wario Land 5. I'm like, the Shake Dimension has a little more weight to it than just Shake It.
Or it's like Luigi's Mansion 2 is called Dark Moon in the US and nowhere else.
Yeah, and then when they did the HD re-release, they decided to go back to Luigi's Mansion 2. It's like, come on, guys. Keep some consistency here. It's like they think we don't know the internet exists and we can't look these things up and find out what they... whatever.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything there is to say about Yoshi's Universal Topsy Turvy. It's really kind of a nothing game, honestly. It's like, hey, we want to use this tilting mechanism for more than just the Wario game, so let's do something with Yoshi, I guess. He hasn't gotten a game in a while. We have all these assets from that failed Yoshi Story remake, so let's do that too. Make everything look like cardboard.
There you go. Got to do something with it.
I guess.
Spent the money. The money's already spent.
And again,
All right.
apparently it came out in 2004. I thought it was way later.
Well, speaking of spending money, the next game that came out in 2004 is the only game that I bought in 2004 and actually played and beat from that year. And actually, I ended up beating both of them eventually, which is the only time I've ever done that. We're talking Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen. So looking back at my list of defeated games on Woodus on the message board, I've got every RPG I've ever played. And it came to me today. I was like, oh, dang, this is actually the first mainline Pokemon that I ever played. I never played the originals. I was in college when those came out. That wasn't really my jam at that time. And I was doing a lot of computer gaming. I've said, especially recently, like late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing a lot of computer gaming. And finally, 2003, I got back into Game Boy Advance, and finally got Dragon Quest VII and caught up with that a couple of years late, and then went back and emulated 5 and 6. And so by 2004, I was like, okay, what have I missed? What's been going on in gaming the past 10 years that I didn't really own consoles and do much? And once I'd exhausted the Game Boy Color Dragon Quests, I turned to Pokemon. I was like, oh, yeah, people have been telling me this is pretty good. I played the trading card game because I'd remembered playing that with other kids that I nannied in the past in '99, but I hadn't really trusted a mainline game. So I went with LeafGreen first, bought both of these, went with LeafGreen first, played through, enjoyed it, and then a couple of years later I went back and played FireRed, and with some of my stuff saved from LeafGreen, I went through and was able to catch them all. Got the whole Pokédex filled out on my FireRed on the second playthrough. And that's also something that I'd only do one or two other times. I did it with my son most recently a couple years ago, but I think I only did it with Ruby Sapphire 2, Game Boy Advance. I had 3 Game Boy Advances. My girlfriend at the time liked playing didn't Peach have her game on Game Boy Advance platformer?
No, that was the Nintendo DS. You're thinking of Super Princess Peach.
Yep. Oh, okay. But I know she loved the classic Marios, and they were all getting released on the Game Boy Advance, right? Am I remembering that now too? Game Boy Advance had
yes, that's correct. It had Mario 2, 3, World, and Yoshi.
Yeah, so I remember my girlfriend was playing through those, so there was a couple Game Boy Advances lying around. I'm like, oh, I can link cable and do all this fun stuff. So I remember trading with myself quite a bit at that time. So fun games. I mean, it's the original games. I've since played through them, again as the Let's Go Pikachu game. Sat with my son a few years ago. But, this is classic Pokemon remade for 2004 modernity. Never started with the old yellow or red or blue. But I like these. The Game Boy Advance, I've played some Pokemon hacks and everything, and a lot of them go back to the Game Boy Advance days and use that as a base, and these were good. These were fun. It convinced me enough to start pre-ordering these as early as Diamond and Pearl. Jay, you got any good FireRed or LeafGreen? Because I'm already done. That's I beat it. It's the original games. I don't know what else to say so much. They were fun. They were...
So it was also the first mainline Pokemon game that I played. I got stuck at the Elite Four for a very long time and I was just ready to just stop. And then years later, I was playing Gale of Darkness on the GameCube. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can transfer stuff over to the other games, because by then I had already started playing Pokemon regularly. And it's like, oh, you need to beat one of the Game Boy Advance games in order to transfer Pokemon out of Gale of Darkness. And I'm like, oh no, that means I need to figure out how to beat LeafGreen. So what I ended up doing was going and finding the legendary birds.
Level them up.
Eventually I did it. Yeah. I did it. It's definitely Kanto again.
Yeah, it's Kanto. It looks nicer. They modernized it. They could hold items. They could. They had natures and whatever. All the stuff that they added by Gen 3.
Because that's kind of just the thing with Pokemon in general, is that Gen 4 was really when it kind of became Pokemon as we know it today. So going back to the Game Boy Advance games is still very different because like the biggest thing they changed was prior to Gen 4, every move of a certain type was either physical or special. So like every fire move, for example, was special. Every normal move was physical. It wasn't until Diamond and Pearl where they changed it as like, okay, Fire Fang is fire and also physical.
Yeah, you started having those split up.
That's all I got for Pokemon. I was
All right.
late. I was late to almost all the Pokemon games. It was like I never really had anyone to play with until like Black and White. So I would play through them once, and that was really it.
And honestly, that's me with the Pokemon series. My son's actually going back, and he realized a couple weeks ago he hadn't done all the DLC. And here we're almost a year later, he hadn't finished all the DLC, and he's been doing Terra Raid battles like crazy recently with Scarlet and Violet. And just yesterday he's like, by the way, I've got like 500 of these Terra shards. I keep collecting them. What are they for again? And so today he's been trading them all in, getting better moves on his favorite Pokemon, or better Terra type, should I say. But no, in general, I really enjoy Pokemon. I'll play through it. I'll beat it. Now that I've got someone else in the house that plays it, maybe the next 2 ones before he goes away to college, I'll have someone to trade with. They provide my 2 to 3 to 5 weeks of fun, and then I just kind of set that series aside for the next year.
Now they're making Legends Pizza.
Legends Pizza. Oh, is that the Z?
Yeah, ZA.
Yeah, ZA, yeah. Yeah, ZA. All right, but before we talk about a 2025 game, hopefully we'll get it next year. Let's stay back in 2004. Yangus, third time around, what do you got for us?
Well, it's funny you say round because that also ties into this next game. It's Katamari Damacy. Woo! So released on the PS2 by Namco. This was during the heyday of experimental early 2000s games. Players control the Prince of the Cosmos as he tries to clean up the mess his jerk of a dad, the King of all Cosmos, created. Your old dad destroyed all the stars in the sky after he went on the space equivalent of a bender, and he charges the prince with fixing all of the stars in the sky rather than doing it himself. Players roll around different environments using the Katamari by controlling it with both of the control sticks, gathering up household items, to roadwork equipment, to people, to toys, to living creatures like animals, and even the continents themselves as you complete each level. So, Platty, when you were saying earlier about the colorful thing, you roll up quite the colorful cast of objects and people as you play through this game. But yeah, this is a game that is as silly as it sounds. Being a pretty casual experience, pretty easy game to pick up and understand and play, but it's very rewarding to learn and master the controls. Being able to hit stage goals and then going absolutely nuts trying to collect everything you can is very satisfying. But if you're needing more of a challenge, the game's got you covered there too. There are some constellation challenges that ask you to roll up certain items to reach a goal, such as Pisces, for example, asking you to roll up as many twins as possible, usually items that are attached together or that are like 2 teddy bears, like one's called Big Brother, one's called Little Brother. Stuff like that. Or there is, speaking of bears, the Ursa Major one where it asks you to roll up the biggest bear-like object you can find. If you roll up any bear object, however, the level ends right on the spot. So you have to be real careful about moving through those kind of stages. In addition, you can also find the various cousins of the cosmos hidden inside levels, and on occasion there's a special present that rewards you with a new cosmetic item to equip to the prince when playing. I actually first played this game via its HD remaster called Katamari Damacy Reroll. I always kind of knew about the series, though, but I never played any of them, especially the first 2 games, since I wasn't a PS2 kid growing up. Finally playing it, though, via the HD remaster that came out a few years ago. I loved how silly this game was and how the phrase, just roll with it, just works so well with this title. The presentation and gameplay is very simple, but very effective. You have a fantastic, energetic soundtrack, which is a common trend with a lot of the series. From listening to different songs on YouTube, there's a lot of really good songs for the series as a whole. And it's great to show up Space Dad, and you want to flip him the bird and show him who's boss at making the stars way better than he ever could. It's always great when you beat a stage and he goes, "We are deeply moved to tears by this beautiful Katamari you created. We never should have doubted you." And it's like, yeah, damn right you shouldn't have.
Do they still bully relentlessly in this game, even when you do decently well?
I mean, he's still kind of a dick, but
they do in the sequel.
It's kind of the charm, though. He's an asshole, but it's fun to show him up.
I never got that far. He wasn't worth my energy.
Yeah. Yeah, we know. But yeah, so this is a great game. I love how just over the top it is in all categories. It's especially funny when you see some of the human characters with like there's always that teen delinquent thing where it's like these kids in Japan who have like the pompadour hairstyles. Well, there's kids you see running around that have these like pompadours that stick out like 5 feet in front of them. It's hilarious. But yeah, it's a super funny game. It's not serious at all, and it's great how all of these things are happening around the world because of the prince rolling stuff up, and the only person who notices it is this one little kid, and everybody else is just totally oblivious to it until they finally end up on the moon, and they're like, "Oh, I guess something was going on, huh? Well, there we go." But yeah, I like this game a lot, and having played the sequel that got remastered last year, if I remember correctly, it's still just so much fun to play. It's a very silly game, and it's one that it's easy to just kind of laugh at how ridiculous that the whole situation is, because you're playing as this character who's only about like 2 inches tall, rolling around this giant ball that just is slowly growing in size with all of these different objects. It's so over the top, but it's so much fun. I love it.
This was the first game, right?
Yes, this was the very first game.
Got it. Okay.
And it was crazy too because this was one of those games that I guess they made it on a really tight budget. Like they didn't even get past $1 million, but it did so well that's why they ended up bringing back the director to make a sequel on the PS2. Because even the second game makes fun of that too, where it's like so many people around the world loved Katamari Damacy. The king was overwhelmed, and he said, "We have to make a sequel. We have to get one out there." They totally just ham it up in the second game. It's great, and he's toned down a lot more, but I personally like Jerk Ass Dad because it was just fun to basically be like, "Hey, Dad, you thought I sucked at my job? Well, guess what, asshole? I'm big ass Katamari. What do you think of that?"
Alrighty. So that's the start of our roll of 3 games through here, everybody. Speaking of 3, we're going to go to Pendy now for his 3rd game that actually has a 3 in it.
Indeed, it does. And this is going to be my most challenging entry to talk about just because of all the names I need to pronounce. So see how it goes.
Better you than me.
Yeah. But I'm going to be talking about Onimusha 3. And it is a very fun hack and slash action adventure game from Capcom. It was released for the PS2 in February of 2004 in Japan and April in North America, with a Windows release in the following years thereafter. The sequel was very well received and does a good job of taking what was so good about the first 2 games and perfecting them here. One of the big selling points for the game at the time was that it also starred Jean Reno. And not only did they use his voice, kind of, but they used his likeness for his video game character as well, just like they did with the starring protagonist of the series, voiced by famed Japanese actor Takashi Kaneshiro. What's hilarious, though, is that Jean Reno only voiced his French lines in the game. Someone else did his English lines, which is what the character speaks for the majority of the game. And the character's English voice was Paul Mercier, who would go on to voice Leon in the Resident Evil games. And in case you didn't know, Jean Reno was a famous French actor who became popular internationally after starring in the movie The Professional with Natalie Portman. Now, the first 2 Onimusha games took place strictly in Japan as a series protagonist. Hidemitsu Samanosuke Akachi would try and take down Nobunaga Oda and his army of demons called Genma. Nobunaga Oda is very loosely based off a real, notorious ancient Japanese warlord and is often used in popular works of Japanese fiction, often portrayed as some supernatural demon, as is the case in this game series. Capcom is infamous for taking a popular idea and stretching it out as far as they can. How many versions of Street Fighter II can we make? In the 90s, they got up to 5, and today they're up to 8 now, if you're still counting. Onimusha is a series that came about because the famous game developer Yoshiki Okamoto at Capcom said, what if we make a Resident Evil game, but put it in ancient Japan with ninjas? This became another trend as they also asked themselves, well, what if we did Resident Evil, but with dinosaurs? Which led to the Dino Crisis series. What I like about this Onimusha series compared to earlier Resident Evil games is that there is much more fighting involved. Whereas in Resident Evil games, you really needed to conserve your ammo and even saves In Onimusha, there's none of that. You have weapons with supernatural powers, and you are out to kick some demon, aka Genma, ass. In this game, you play as multiple characters with different weapon types. The lead protagonist, Samanosuke, uses various short-range weapons such as a sword, but can also use a bow. Jean Renault's character, Jacques, uses a whip-like weapon he can capture and chuck enemies around with, which is a lot of fun. Both of these characters have a gauntlet that uses the power of the Oni to suck souls from your defeated enemies to heal and to upgrade and add supernatural elemental and magic attacks to their weapons. There's also two side characters that specialize. One of them specializes in modern firearms and the other in lances, and I think of it like a mini game. What makes this game primarily different from the last two is that there's time travel involved, where Samanosuke is transported to modern-day Paris from ancient Japan, and Jacques is transported to ancient Japan from modern-day Paris. They get the old switcheroo, in which both locations are under attack by the Genma. There are fun game elements to this, as they can use the power of their gauntlets to communicate with each other through time and even pass items back and forth to each other. Like with the other games, there are puzzle elements here. Affecting what you do in the past can help your partner in the future, and items in the future can be passed back to help you out in the past. It's a really fun and entertaining game overall. I recommend it to anyone. As far as this first trilogy of Onimusha games go, while it does wrap up the storyline, you really can't go wrong starting here or with any of the other games in the trilogy, as the storyline is only very loosely connected to each other between games. All three games have the same protagonist where you try and defeat Nobunaga. On a side note, the opening CGI intro for this third game is insane, as we see the protagonist single-handedly taking out a huge mobile demon fortress. It's a fun opening to the game. Has anyone else tried this series before?
Not I.
No, I have not, but I have played as one of the characters from the series in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom.
Oh, I didn't know he was in that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's the protagonist of this game, Pendy, but it is one of the protagonists from the series.
Oh, okay, cool. One of these days, I really need to play that game. It's one of the few versus games that I never got around to playing.
I've never heard of this before, but I did play Pokemon Conquest recently, and the main villain in that is Oda Nobunaga.
Yeah, they use him in a lot of different
He's
stories.
in a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He's also like the main guy in Dynasty Warriors too. I've heard of Onimusha, but I've never played it.
All right. Well, sounds good. I know I've never played that. I'm the same way as Blue. I've never even heard of it. But now your explanation is, I'm like, oh, well, I've never played Resident Evil, so now I know why I haven't played the Resident Evil in those times either. All right, Blue, we're up to you, and then we're gonna... Jay, did you have a third one to talk about, or no?
No, I figured I'd get my extra thoughts in on some of the stuff you guys were talking about, and that's already pretty much happened already.
No problem. Then I will lead to Blue, because I'm going to pivot, and Blue, I'm going to play off of you for my last one. I'm going to take my honorable mention and move it up and make my third one an honorable mention.
Yeah, awesome. I can bounce off of that too. So I was really surprised to find out that this was a 2004 release. And this is gonna come out of left field for everything else that I've ever talked about ever. And I know I said that about Zoo Tycoon and Zoo Vet, but this one is a little bit more. So my third game is Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth, and it's a real-time strategy game for computer, and it was like 4 discs just to hold all of the game. We played the crap out of that game, mostly for the city building, and I mean a little bit for the warfare, but mostly the warfare was taking more cities so that you could build more cities, at least for me. It was a lot of fun because you could play as Gondor, Rohan, Isengard, or Mordor, and each one had like different city layouts and different units that you could craft, and so different things that they were good at versus not good at. And as you played through the game, you would get points that you could use to summon great heroes. So you could get Gandalf, and Gandalf could mess everybody up by summoning Ents. There was so much that you could do in this game. There was a campaign mode that I think had you start in Moria, and it was supposedly going through the story. However, I don't think we ever got very far in it because we weren't very good when we were young. But it existed. There was a similar game to this one that was called War of the Ring, but that one was a little bit older and a little bit more, I don't want to say off-brand, but it was like before the movies really came out. So Battle for
Mhm.
Middle-earth definitely uses all of the designs from the movies. War of the Rings just kind of did its own thing. And so both of them were interesting. You know, you had to gather food and like ore things in order to build the things for your city. But yeah, we spent a lot of time playing that, which I mean with 4 discs of content.
Yeah, you got a lot.
So then, Platty, I can bounce it over to you.
Yeah, so there was a so let's see, what is it? I remember 2000 was when I remember seeing the ads for the movies. Did they come out in like 2001, 2, and 3 or something like that? The
That sounds
original
about
trilogy.
right.
Yeah, I know it was early 2000s, so like this was height of the Lord of the Rings content. So not only do we get Battle for Middle Earth, we got Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. And not only
Woo!
did we get the Third Age on like PS2 and GameCube, we got Third Age on Game Boy Advance. And the Game Boy Advance one was a completely different game. I'll start with that because honestly, I'm like been looking through a little video of it, and I don't think I can talk more than a minute. The Third Age on Game Boy Advance is the only strategy RPG I've ever beaten. It is a very small scale strategy RPG. You take like 3 or 4 people from the movies and the books into grid-based battles and move them around, and you get action points, something with the left, right, and center. You get different every turn. You get certain number of points for whoever's on the left, whoever's in the middle, who's ever on the right. You level up by getting XP. You can spend your XP on different items to make your person better. Every time your player actually like goes and engages an enemy, it switches to a little your hero on the left, the enemy on the right, and they do a little attack animation. Probably a little bit drawn out. Could have just, popped the number up there like, oh, okay, I just hit that orc, but you're going to see that animation of you swinging at an orc like a million times in the game.
That's standard for that kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'll just have that. And I will say it went quickly. It was enough not to annoy me on the Game Boy Advance back in the day. And actually just watching some long plays of it on YouTube, it's a quick. It's, on PS2, that would be a loading screen every time. But the graphics of this and the smallness of a Game Boy, it did it pretty quick. You got to play some of your favorite movie stars, and they even looked like the movie stars in there. Like you had Elrond, and it looks like the movie actor Elrond, and Boromir looks just like him. There's campaigns. I believe there was some other things, but oh gosh, there's Gimli. There's basically everybody from the movies are on here, and their actor photos. Which, if I'm not mistaken, when we talk about the other one, that's completely different. But it was a fun little Game Boy Advance game. I think I picked it up thinking it was just a smaller version of the big one, because I'm pretty sure I remember the PS2 version first. And it was one of the first games I ever played on my PlayStation 2, because I was like, Lord of the Rings, oh my god, that was my favorite book series when I was in high school, and the movies have been amazing the past few years, and I have all the extended cuts and can sit and watch these for 12 hours. Like, yes, give me more Lord of the Rings. So the fact that I got suckered into buying a strategy RPG, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I played through it. You'd have your little units, and in strategy RPG terms, I guess it was okay. I would have nothing to compare it to, but didn't make me into a strategy RPG guy.
But you didn't put it down either.
I didn't put it down. I was not like, oh my god, this is horrible. I loved my movie tie-in. Then we got the non-movie tie-in game, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, and it came out for Xbox and PlayStation 2 and GameCube right at the end there of 2004.
And it's a masterpiece. What else can I say?
It is. It is. Like, gosh, the battle system was ripped right out of Final Fantasy X. Like, copy and paste. Even for like where on the screen a lot of the things were in the battle system. I don't know how EA, I guess EA just was like, we'll do that. We don't do a lot of turn-based battles, so we'll just copy something that's popular. But it had nothing to do with the movie people, right? Like, they didn't have a license, if I'm not mistaken.
So they had a license for the movies, but not for the characters.
That's...
So you're playing as not the Fellowship, following the Fellowship.
You're a Fellowship.
As they move through Middle-earth. So...
Yep.
You start off with the Gondor warrior, and then you meet the Lothlorien elf, and the Dunedain ranger, and then the dwarf of Erebor, and then 2 people from Rohan. And
yeah,
Yangus puts in the chat, it's the fellowship. And yes, it is.
Yes, completely. Lowercase fellowship or uppercase fellowship, either way.
So yeah, it's a really kind of interesting, somewhat of a self-insert fan fiction. It feels like kind of the story.
They have story reasons for doing this, right? Like,
yes.
Oh hey, he dropped a ring, you got to follow him, or something like that.
Yeah, it gets kind of weird, and it's kind of an anime plot by the end of it. I guess I'm gonna go into spoilers now, but essentially your main character is kind of under Sauron's spell, and they're trying to get him to take the ring from Boromir, who's going to take the ring from Frodo, and then that doesn't happen, obviously, but he just keeps like kind of coming back, sort of. It's a really weird plot, and there's a lot of drama between the characters too, because almost right off the bat, the elf girl that you meet in the woods is just like making out with your main Gondorian guy, which, you know, that's cool. I'm happy for them. But then you find the other girl from Rohan, and then the elf gets really jealous, and you just see like the ranger and the dwarf in the back being like, I don't know, girls, man. That is a scene, basically. It's it's all over the place, but honestly, it's so funny to go back and play it now, just because it's kind of it's a bad story, but it's bad in such a funny way that it's very entertaining. And so as the fellowship is going through, you know, you do major battles with the characters of the fellowship. So you end up fighting the Balrog with Gandalf, because that totally makes sense.
That was my favorite fight in the game, was fighting that thing.
Yeah, and I mean,
and it looked really good too.
It looked really good.
Some good PS. Okay, go ahead, Blue.
Sorry, I keep hearing you guys cut out, and I don't know if it's on my end or not. But I digress. That fight usually ends up being just Gandalf alive and everybody in your party being dead because Gandalf is overpowered and you suck. You can put things together to make it not do that, but you have to know what you're doing.
And one of the best parts about this game is the multiplayer aspect of it.
Yes.
I played this with my good friend Nate back in the day when I got this game, and we played the whole game together, and we would just take turns who was going to explore the map, and then you could fight together in the fights, and it was so much fun doing that in that Final Fantasy X type style.
Yeah, each player gets to control 3 of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so by extension, you get to, you know, sort of decide what to train on each character and how to make them better. One of the things that we did notice, which is a little bit unrelated, but I do want to say it now because I'm thinking of it. So you do talk to the members of the Fellowship when you're at like Helm's Deep. You like talk to the elf girl talks to Legolas, and you know the dwarfs talk to each other and that kind of thing. And it's really funny, because the in-game like player character models, they look pretty good, but then you go and see them right next to like Legolas. Legolas is looking a little bit like PS1 Hagrid. And so just the two of them side by side is really funny. It's also really funny because they had licensing to the movies. These conversations that are all fully voice acted, they had to write the dialogue so that the responses clipped from the movie made sense. And I think at one point, Aragorn is talking to your party and he says like, you bow to no one, and it's just like out of context because you know he says that to the hobbits after everything, but it's just, you know, these guys in the middle of Pelennor Field that are taking down some orcs, you bow to no one. It's funny in its ridiculousness and I love it.
It is. I think it's a classic for us here. Like, I know this is I don't think I've played a Lord of the Rings after these two.
I don't think.
But
oh no, there were a couple.
They've got more like what you did. That you said the Battle for Middle Earth. They've got more real time strategies.
Yeah. There's also I think the Shadow of Mordor series is maybe the more recent one, but I haven't played those. But the one that I did play was Aragorn's Quest for the Wii. That was a fun game, but that was not 2004.
No. So there you go. Like a trio. They had a trio of Lord of the Ring games this year. Almost one might say a trilogy.
Even though
in
two of them were
these.
the third age.
Even though and two of them were completely different, but named the same, 100% different. All right, so there's our 2 or 3 each. Did anybody else have some honorable mentions before we wrap this up? I know, Pendy, you had dishonorable mentions or unhonorable mention.
I got
do.
some honorable
Oh.
mentions. We can go with the good
All right.
ones first.
We'll go with good ones then. Go ahead.
So looking at the list, things that made me smile and brought up memories of my childhood. One of them was Hamster Ball, which is exactly how it sounds. You are a hamster, you are in a ball, and you are sort of navigating through platforming levels, but you can't really jump, so you have to just roll up, and it's kind of like the
It's
ball.
basically Super Monkey Ball, but with hamsters.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
not hamster Damacy?
No. No.
Couldn't squeeze that in. Nope, sorry.
So another one that came out this year, the year 2004, that's near and dear to my heart is Spyro: A Hero's Tale. It was like the first Spyro game that I owned, and so I remember playing it a lot as a kid. And one that I just need to mention, I don't think we played it. My brother has played games in this series, but I have not, and I don't think we played this one, but I can't believe they got away with this title. And that is Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal.
I bet that was different in the Europe.
Probably.
Yeah, and that one they just called it Up the Ass.
Oh man, what a bloody good name. So my honorable mention would be the Ticket to Ride video game came out here. Board game's been around for a while. I absolutely love this board game. We've got 4 or 5 different variations purchased at home. It's a board game, and then the app. I haven't played the exact 2004 one, but the app is basically the 2004 one because you're just recreating the board game. It's a game where, and this one had the base map of the United States. You've got 34 cities across the United States. There are paths between cities, and you've got 45 trains, and you've got to connect the cities that you draw routes throughout the game. You pick it up and hey, if you can connect Los Angeles to Chicago, you get 15 points. Or if you connect Miami to St. Paul, Minnesota, you get 18 points or something like that. And you spend your game trying to draw colored cards so that you can play 3 reds, so you can put them on the red spaces, or 4 blues, so you can go in the blue spaces, and connect city to city. The video game plays exactly like the board game. I've sat and played on the app for many hours trying some of the add-on. I've even bought some of the add-ons. Just like on our bookshelf, we've got Ticket to Ride Europe, Ticket to Ride Rails and Sails, which is the whole world, basically a big world map, and you can have boats as well. I think we have Africa. And what was really fun was a few years ago, Woodus's son made a Dragon Quest IX map. He took King Zenith's high-quality scan of the overworld Dragon Quest IX, made a 3 foot wide by 2 foot tall map that he put all the cities in there. And we've played it a couple dozen times as a family, and we always joke, who's going to get Angel Falls to Xerox. We feel like all the paths that are worth the most points end up at Xerox at some point. From Coffinwell to Xerox, from Down Under to Xerox. I don't know. I think his son was obsessed with Xerox when he made it. Either that, or those are just the cards that we see the most and do it. But that was fun. And recently I've been trying to talk him and his son into you guys are playing Dragon Quest X now. I'm playing Dragon Quest X now. It's not the Starflight Express, but all these cities are connected by railroad tracks. There's a lot of overworld in Dragon Quest X, and probably half the overworld maps you see the train tracks going through. And sometimes they're a barrier. Sometimes you can't get around them, or you have to find the path under the train track, over the train track. Where is it going? And there's a lot of train stuff in Dragon Quest X. So I'm like, come on, Woodus. Come on. Your son's got nothing to do for a while, right? He can make a Dragon Quest X version of Ticket to Ride. And then the other day he posts somewhere, and his son had made an alternate version. I don't know if he added more of the smaller towns to Dragon Quest IX or rebalanced it or something. And I was like, oh man, we've played that version so much at home. Could you please send me the new version too? But it's just a really good game, and the app really gets everything that is correct about the board game right in a video game thing. And you can still get it. It's on Steam, but it's easy. It's an easy enough play thing. I mean, my kids understood how to play it at 4. It's an easy enough touch app game to play on the go. Angus, you got an honorable mention before we get to Pendy's dishonorable ones?
I think the only other one that I saw that jumped out at me was, I don't really know if I'd call it honorable or dishonorable. It's kind of more of a meh mention.
It's just a mention.
Yeah, it's just a mention. There was Mario Power Tennis, I guess, came out on the GameCube that year. I'll be honest, I wasn't really a huge fan of this entry. I much preferred the Nintendo 64 game. It was a cool idea for what they did, where they gave characters like offense and defense special moves you could use if your meter was full on like your racket. It would show because it would like be glowing and stuff. But I just really wasn't that into it, so it's just kind of a mention.
a mention.
It's a mention.
All right, so we started with the honorable. We've hit the mid-range. And Pendy, what did you see that you were like, oh, fuck, those games? Oh, cool. Jay, jump in. Do it.
Yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 apparently also came out in 2004. It was the series debut into 3D, and it should have stayed 2D. There we go. That's the mention.
Should have left the 3 alone. Well, Pendy, now it's time for your unhonorable, and I see a 3 in one of those names.
Yes, there is, unfortunately, in the worst way possible. But yeah, I have 2 quick dishonorable mentions. The first one I'll talk about, and while I'm talking about this, I realize that I'm going to violate the first rule of Fight Club by talking about Fight Club, but in this case, Fight Club, the video game. It was a gift to me from a good friend that was really into the movie. I enjoyed the movie a lot as well, and it was a really thoughtful gift, but it ended up being a really awful video game. In the right hands, it could have been a great game. The idea was certainly solid, but the execution was just really poor. It just had a really janky control scheme, and the characters are difficult to manipulate. The moves you pull off aren't very intuitive. The concept of pulling off moves that could break bones with a little X-ray effect to it was really fun, but really hard to pull off. It's something that was done to much greater effect in Mortal Kombat games. Unfortunately, Fight Club was just a cheap tie-in game. My other one is a dishonorable shout out to Driv3r. That's where my 3 comes in. Though, of course, to show that it was a game for the cool kids, the E in Driver was replaced with the 3. The first 2 games in the series were wildly fun, popular, and entertaining. They had great stories with well-built, fantastic driving missions that were placed in a funky 1960s or 1970s type era. Driv3r, however, was placed in a more contemporary setting, and it had this all-star cast of actors like Mickey Rourke, Michelle Rodriguez, Michael Madsen, Ving Rhames, a tremendous budget, a prolific advertising campaign, and even though it did sell decent with 4 million copies sold, it fell well short of Atari's estimated 10 million-ish sales goal. Why? While the actual driving parts of the game were still tremendous fun, there was a large part of the game where you are on foot in third-person shooting sections of the missions, and that part is a steaming pile of garbage. They should have just stuck with what made 1 and 2 so fun. In 3, the on-foot parts had very awkward and stiff controls and were not fun to do. They wanted to basically expand the series and kind of make it more like a Grand Theft Auto type game, and they just failed miserably at doing it. I was a huge fan of the series, so I was also very disappointed by this entry when I picked it up. Now, if you want to see a terrific in-depth retrospective about the history of the game and what went wrong, I have a great video on YouTube that I'll put in the show notes, made by a guy that goes by Mini-Me.
Yeah. Did that series continue?
It did. There was, I think the 4th one was called like Parallel Lines or something like that. And I think that might have been the last one, but don't quote me on that.
This might have been towards the end of the, leading to the end of it.
Yeah.
Maybe not. It was the end of Pendy's voyage with it.
It was. I have Parallel Lines for the Wii, but I just never got around to playing it. And I heard it's a lot better. But yeah, Driv3r, a lot of people were not happy with the way it tried to make it into something that it wasn't.
Alrighty, well, there you've got it. We've got some good, meh, and ugly at the end from our 2004 video game list. All right, guys, we did it. That's our roundup for 2004 video games. In a couple of weeks, we'll be back here again. We'll fast forward another 10 years. We'll hit the 2014 list, and then in a month or so, we will try to travel future in time and predict what's going to be on our playlist in 2034. But that's all for tonight.
Dragon Quest 12, hopefully.
I'm
Oh, no,
hoping for Dragon
PlayStation
Quest 13
6.
by then.
Are we supposed to have
Dragon
like
Quest
Dragon
12
Quest
on the
16 on the
PlayStation
PS7 or something? Or PS6? That's what it is, PS6.
Was it 12 or was it 14 that was in the manga?
God,
Oh,
I
in the Sandman
12.
manga, it was
Yeah, in the Sandman.
It was 13 on the PlayStation 6.
Okay, yeah.
Yep,
well,
So
okay,
that
so
might
we're
actually
right
that
on
might
track
actually
for
happen.
that.
We
Yes.
are. So that might actually happen.
I can't
All
wait
right,
to play
well-
Pikmin 5 in 2034.
I mean, they're taking their time with that series as well.
no, Jay. What they're gonna do? They're gonna remake Hey Pikmin and call it Hey Pikmin or call it Hello Pikmin or something.
I have no issue with that. Hey, Pikmin's a totally fine game.
Well, get ready because in 2034 there's gonna be the sequel game Hello Pikmin.
Hello, Pikmin.
It's more formal that way, saying hello instead of hey.
You know that I like to remind people often that we don't crowdsource or dynamically insert ads that you don't give two shits about. We're grown-ass adults that like to talk about video games and other topics that we enjoy. We don't need a dime of your money to do so. But if you got some dimes and you'd like to contribute to DQ fandom, feel free to head on over to the Dragon's Den, donate some money to Woodus, who's paid to keep those lights on into its third decade now, or use one of his affiliate links. You can buy Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest Monsters 3, quite literally anything else on Amazon.
Yes, in fact, you can also pre-order Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D because that's coming soon. Just a few more months.
That's right. Good call. All right, everyone. Bye.
Side quest complete.
This is Gertrude for Slime Time, reminding you all that you must complete your adventure.